let me just first introduce ourselves. So my name is Ditte, and I am a technical project manager here at Frosmo. And with me here is Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm the product manager at Frosmo.
All right. You have the opportunity to, by the way, ask questions. So just drop the questions in the question field, and we can answer them in the later part of this webinar. So let's go through the agenda that we're going to be talking about today. First, we'll go through the introduction to experimentation. So basically just going through like why we should do this and the benefits, why we should do experimentation and testing. And then let's get introduced to hypothesis-driven experimentation. Then we'll move on to, in the second part, to different types of testing. And I will go through some A/B testing, and then Tom will cover the multi-arm Bandit testing. And then in the end, we'll have a summary on the whole thing so that you have a clear idea how to get started with experimentation. So let's move along to part one, introduction. And basically there are a lot of benefits to experimentation. I gathered here a few, like kind of the easy ones of these clear benefits that you can have. So sometimes there can be maybe a little bit of a lot of things that you can experiment on, and you want to maybe have like a little bit of direction on what you want to develop next. And basically this is also a good point of making business decisions based on data. So these business decisions should always be based on data that kind of makes sense. So that's where experimentation kind of comes in handy. Also, like, there can be a lot of risks in costs if you don't really know where to go next, or you maybe don't want to really invest on development if you don't really know the direction where to go. So experimentation really helps in that as well. Also, understanding your audience on a deeper level. And maybe you all already have a little bit of data about how your audience maybe behaves, or maybe you don't. But this is a great way of gaining that knowledge. And also, maybe you already know a little bit about what are the pain points for your customers when using the website, or maybe not. But this is also like a really good way of finding out like what those pain points are and how to resolve them. Test different things, how to resolve them. And then in the end also, these little improvements that you can make through experimentation really result in business value. So here are a little bit of like a few examples of what those can be, but what we've seen at least is, like, for example, reduced bounce rate. So people are really taking their time, spending more time on your page when it's offering them maybe a nicer experience. Reduced cart abandonment, increased conversion rates, and therefore increased sales as well. So we've had like cases where our customers have had increased conversion rate of 41% even by testing out recommendations on their website. So that's a huge improvement. So let's have a look at how this hypothesis-driven experimentation is kind of formulated. So how we like to kind of here at Frosmo also like start with experimentation is that you first create a hypothesis. So you have a hypothesis of what is your kind of the end result that you want to achieve with this, or your kind of expectation of what you're looking for through experimentation or testing. And then you set goals, and it's also really important to set the goals before you start testing, so you kind of know what you're measuring, and then you can really know, like, are the results good or not. So this should be really done before you start experimenting anything. So those are the first parts, and then you move on to testing your content. And testing your content, it can take a little bit of time. It can be 1 week or it can be a month. It really depends. But after that, we get to analyzing the results. So this is kind of like the cycle how this hypothesis-driven development should be done in. And we can go a little bit deeper on how to form this high-quality hypothesis. So it should kind of follow this formula of we believe that creating this feature for these people will achieve this outcome. We will validate this when we see this result. So I have a little example of like a really simple example how this could sound like. So let's say we believe that creating a discount badge for visitors who visit the category page will achieve higher number of conversions. We will validate this when we see number of conversions increased by 7%, for example. Then kind of we can from this kind of move on to saying this result impacts our business in this way. So for example, in this example, we would say, so number of conversions increased by 7%, impacts our business increase in sales with 4%, as an example. So it should really go into like these details that you really need to think about what you're kind of wanting to achieve with as a result from this experiment. So experimentation is also a part of this kind of fail fast thinking. So if we go through this image right here, so first in the bottom we have this hypothesis. There we have like maybe an A/B test like in this image. So you have versions A and B. You have a hypothesis linked to them. Then you go on experimenting them in the experimentation layer. And maybe in the end you get a validation for this A version. So A version is the clear winner. After you get the validation on this, you can continue running it, for example, on Frosmo on top of your website, or then it can also kind of move on to like a permanent backlog, and you can take it as a kind of permanent feature on your website. It really depends on how you want to do it. But oftentimes experimentation is used for kind of finding out what kind of things you want to have like as a permanent feature on your website. And then let's move on to different types of testing. So as we were already talking about a little bit about A/B testing, A/B testing can also have more variations. So it can be like ABC testing, or even more variants can be included in this kind of testing. But basically it's comparing two or more variations of a web page against each other to find out which variation performs better. And with this type of testing, you can really test quite a lot of things. So here I have a few examples, and these are probably the most common ones. So copy, it can be different versions of a text, or text on a button, or something like that, or even the style, how the text is presented in the website. It can be layout, so you can maybe change the layout so that different elements on the page are located differently in different versions. It can be navigation, so maybe for some users you show a different kind of navigation, maybe a more simple navigation to see which navigation works better. And then CTA, call to action, is very important. So sometimes maybe you get more clicks on the call to action element if it's placed somewhere else, or if it has a different color, or a different form, or a different icon, or something like that. Just different versions of it can make a real difference. And then lastly, social proof. So this can kind of include recommendations, for example, or customer reviews on your page, or badges like discount badges, or something like popular right now for a product, something that kind of gains people's interest. So this can also make a huge difference in conversions, for example. So here I have a few kind of visual examples of what we could, for example, test. So here's kind of a layout experimentation. So we are basically in one version we have the call to action button quite low, so it's kind of underneath the fold. So you're not really able to see it when you first land on this mobile product page. But what if we lift it up a little bit more, so it's a bit higher, and then we have the rest of the information a little bit lower? This could be a really nice test to see if people actually click on the buy button or the call to action button a little bit more often. And here's an example of a badge. So basically showing like how much savings you can have by having this badge on the category page. Quite often we have a lot of customers that have these market prices, so they might have a market price that is shown and then their own price next to that, so that the visitor can see that how much money they could save by buying from this provider. And then here's another example of adding a new feature, this cart preview box for when you've added a new item in your basket. So showing something like added content and kind of comparing that against when you don't show this kind of added content can also be a really nice test. And sometimes it can be even that you have this kind of hypothesis that maybe this could drive more sales, but sometimes maybe it doesn't. Like in this case, maybe when the user sees that, okay, I have a lot of stuff in my basket, when maybe they get scared and abandon the basket, but you never know if you don't test. So sometimes maybe the results can be even a little bit surprising, but this is a good thing to test maybe. So then Tom will move on to multi-arm bandit testing, which is a little bit different from A/B testing, but...
Yeah, that's right. As Didde mentioned, A/B testing, you pit different variations against each other to ultimately pick a winner. Multi-arm bandit really isn't that different. With both of them, you have these variations, you pit them against each other, and you hope that you find a winner, which is most often the one with the best conversions. The difference, however, is that with A/B testing, you manually assign your traffic usually equally between these different variations. So everything gets shown the same amount of time to the same amount of visitors. And then once you've reached this statistical significance, you'll pick your winner and you'll show that on your website. What you do is you spend a lot of time here explaining or exploring which variation is going to be your winner. Whereas with multi-arm bandit, you rely on these machine learning algorithms to continuously and automatically assign traffic to the best performing variation. So what you have here is that if you have a variation that performs poorly, we take traffic away from that, and we know there's one that performs much better, we give that one more traffic. This results in a higher total amount of conversions, which also means you miss out on less conversions, and you get to the end result quicker. A good example for that would be campaigns where, say you're running a weekly campaign or a contest that you want to do in a week. If you do A/B testing, probably by the end of that week you'll have your significance, and there is no time anymore to exploit the winning result. However, with multi-arm Bandit, the traffic would get allocated to the best performing one early on. This would lead to a much higher conversion rate compared to A/B testing, but also compared to doing nothing at all. So experimenting here would really help you get those conversions and make sure that that campaign is a real success. Then, on the other hand, it's also great for when you do experiments which take a really long time otherwise. Think about one thing that they said is with A/B testing you can have A, B, C. Well, you can run through the alphabet. It can go pretty complicated. These complex tests would usually run or could run for months or up to years if you really want to reach the right significance. With multi-arm Bandit, this would be done much quicker. You would automatically see that those variations which really perform poorly, they would get dropped. You don't give them any traffic anymore. You allocate that to those variations that could be potential winners. And when you do that, again, you get a lot more total conversions, you get the result quicker. It really makes sense in those cases to go with multi-arm Bandit experiments. That being said, how quickly you reach this winner or how quickly you start dropping out other variations all depends on which algorithm you pick. So within Frosmo we use 5 algorithms at the moment. We have Thompson sampling, upper confidence bound 1 tuned, epsilon greedy, and softmax. The main difference between all of them is simply how aggressive they are. So how quickly are you going to assign traffic to a winning variation? How quickly are you going to drop out others? Are you going to assign any traffic to those variations that aren't performing well? It's really a risk versus reward. And this is why it's important for business to be also informed about which algorithms you pick. Are you really that confident that one of your variations is going to be much better? If so, you want to assign traffic to that as soon as possible. Or are there cases where you think that they might be so close or people's taste might even change over time? In that case, you would use one of the algorithms that always assigns traffic to all variations so that over time the result would correct themselves. I think at the moment 90 to 95% of our customers use Thompson sampling or softmax. And if we take a closer look at the use cases, that makes total sense because as you can see they are on opposite sides of each other. For example, in these use cases where you expect one variation to perform consistently over time, say whether you want a banner on your website or not, people will probably stick to one of those, like yes, we like the banners, or no, we don't. And their taste will most likely not change. So you want to pick an algorithm that gets you a conclusion and that you can then turn off and just take that winning variation into practice, into use. On the other hand, there are those cases where you expect those variations to fluctuate slowly over time. This could be to, for example, seasonality, different clothes, different colors being in season. In these cases, you would take an algorithm that would always assign some traffic to those variations that aren't performing maybe that great right now, but they could be in the future. And then the last one, it's a hybrid case where you're pretty sure you know that one is better now, but it's always good to keep on testing, so you always assign a little bit of traffic to those variations that could pick up. Another thing you could do here is drop out those variations that do perform poorly and replace them with something else. See if something else fits better against them. See if you can find a new winner. If you work this way, you can keep multi-arm Bandit experiments running indefinitely. And but yeah, with these algorithms, with multi-arm Bandit, with A/B testing, there's really no reason for you not to experiment, I'd say.
Yeah. So let's go through a few things to kind of get you started with experimentation now that you've heard all the different types and about the hypothesis-driven experimentation. So our suggestion is to prioritize these low-hanging fruits. So you can make a list of hypotheses that you think will make the most impact on your website. It's kind of easier to start with those and kind of start with those. Then formulate your hypothesis, like we were looking at the hypothesis kind of model before. So you need to think about what and for whom and with what outcome. Also pick the right tool for the job. So as I was telling you about A/B testing, maybe this multi-arm bandit would be better for your purpose. So it really depends on what you're testing and what your kind of expectation is also. Then really important thing, allow enough time for your testing period to get conclusive results. So especially with A/B testing, it's really good that you kind of take your time to have the test running, but it really depends on where you are testing. So for example, if you're testing something on your home page, maybe you get a lot of visitors anyway kind of in the test, but if it's something more kind of restricted, so maybe it's only maybe this variations are only shown to a part of your visitors, or you're testing it at some part of the website that doesn't get as many visitors as your front page. So you are the expert maybe to kind of make this decision on how much traffic you're expecting to have. But usually it should be at least a few weeks, maybe one to 3 weeks, depending on your case. And then another really important thing is to run one test at a time. And this is because we don't really want to risk that we're contaminating the results. So if you're, for example, you want to do several tests on your front page or on product page, maybe take one at a time so you can see what is impacting and what. So in this case, if you have a lot of things on a list that you want to test, maybe have a little timetable for those as well. So reserve a couple of weeks for some feature to test and then move on to the next one. Then the last thing we have here is rinse and repeat, and by this we mean that even though this maybe takes a lot of time and effort to run these experiments, it should really be incorporated to your business development process. So this should be like a crucial part of that, because it really benefits you in the end if you just take it as a part of this whole process. Then we have time for questions, and let's see if we have any already. So we have one question here. What could be the ideal time to run an experiment? So we were already a little bit discussing about that already, but I would say that it's good to start with at least a couple of weeks, or that's kind of on the safe side. It can be a little bit longer even if you don't really have so much traffic coming onto your site. But I think if it's your first test or experimentation, then reserve some time and then look at the results kind of as you go. So if you can notice that, okay, the results are not really changing anymore after 3 weeks or so, then you probably know that this is the time to kind of quit the test and then start analyzing the results. But I would say maybe 2-3 weeks. What do you think, Tom? Maybe that would be on the safe side.
Yeah, and again, this depends. Do you use your A/B testing? Do you use your multi-arm bandit? But really, start now. Start creating your lists. See where can you make these changes. even if there's no difference, at least you'll get into the rhythm, into the routine of creating these hypotheses and then running your experiments and looking at the data. It's such a good habit to get into that I think any company should really start doing that.
Yeah. Then we have another question, which is how to choose the long-hanging fruits. So this was referring to like where to kind of start. What could be the next, like the first things you could test on. And I don't know. My opinion is probably that if you kind of know that there are some kind of pain points or something that maybe you have some feedback already from the users somehow. Maybe there's something that is kind of preventing people from using the site effectively, or they're not really converting, or something like that. You have maybe a hunch of what that could be. Maybe start experimenting around that. I would say that would be something to start with. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think if we go practical, if you're running an e-commerce site, for example, retail, you have your category pages. People have to click through the product to order something, to click the buy now buttons. One test you could run immediately is, what if you would show this button already on the category page? So when you hover over something, you can add it to your cart directly. This would shorten the process, might lead to more items out of the cart, might lead to higher conversions. These things are something where you will have to you'll have to create a clear. Again, you come back to this hypothesis. What do you expect to get out of it? Is this worth it? But it's quite easy to see in these cases that yes, this will be a significant difference to the user experience. This may be a more optimal user experience.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what testing is all about. It's about improving and optimizing those user experiences.
Yes. Okay, I'm looking here if we have more questions. It seems like not. So if there isn't any more questions, I think we can maybe wrap it up soon. So I just want to say before we go that if you are interested in experimentation, you can always contact us and we will help you get started. And yeah, that's it for us. So thank you, Tom, and everyone in the audience. And have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.